The high-grade Destiny Gundam Spec 2 and Zeus Silhouette might be the craziest Gundam kit released this year. Most definitely the craziest high-grade without a single doubt. This is basically a 2-in-1 pack containing the Destiny Gundam Spec 2, a slightly different variant of the 2019 version of the Destiny Gundam, as well as the Zeus Silhouette, basically a giant mobile armor that combines with said Destiny Gundam. It is pretty crazy. So if you've wanted yourself an absolutely huge high grade with a massive railgun, this is the one you're looking for. Anyway, as usual, this video right here would not have been possible without those absolutely fantastic people over at HobbyLink Japan. Link is down there in the description. Now let's get right on into it. So now jumping on into the aesthetics, and we're going to start off first with the high-grade Destiny Spec 2 itself. So first off, I will mention this is 100% physically identical to the standard 2019 Destiny Gundam. The only real difference is the color. So just flashing back in time a little bit to 2019, and this is what the standard 2019 version of the Destiny looked like. So yellow V-fin, and the whites are pristine white. The rest of the colors are quite vivid, whereas what we have today is very, very muted. And while I'm actually showing a side-by-side right now, I will mention that the difference between 2019 quality and 2024 quality on here is 100% down to the patrons on Patreon. That is 100% what funds the upgrades to the channel. So if you're interested, link in the description. And right now we are running a Build Fighters themed kit bash contest with prizes. But yeah, it goes without saying that the high-grade Destiny Gundam looks fantastic. It looked fantastic 5 years ago, and it still looks fantastic right now. You could almost say in some regards, this even looks better than the Gundam SEED FREEDOM kits that have been coming out this year. Pretty much the entire body on this is fully color accurate. Even the backpack, you can't really say that about a lot of the designs and new suits that did come from the Freedom movie. This may be down to the fact that those kits and the mobile suits from the movies were ridiculously super detailed, so some of the colors obviously couldn't be pulled off in plastic, while keeping the kits at a reasonable price, mainly around the backpacks where they did have a lot of stickers. One thing I will mention about the Destiny right here, it's not an aesthetic thing, but you might have noticed this on the heels, is it is a bit of a back-heavy kit, so posing it standing can be a little bit difficult, so I do recommend getting yourself a stand. There are 2 stands included in this box. You can totally use those, or you can just do what I did and stick a little bit of blue tack on the heels. It will just stop it from toppling backwards, kind of sticks it to the surface ever so slightly. So my version here of the Destiny Spec 2 is straight built, so there is no panel lining, no nothing added to it, just snipped off the runner and put together. There isn't a crazy amount of surface detail on this kit, which I could say is anime accurate, but if you are a fan of the anime, you will notice that this right here has been stylized more in the traditional high-grade style, compared to the more toony kind of vibe that we did see in the actual Gundam SEED anime, but that doesn't really translate so much into the actual Freedom movie, so this may be a little bit more accurate towards that source. Without getting too picky, I would say aesthetically this is a perfect high-grade kit, but if I was to get a little bit picky, the head unit on this does suffer a little bit from some old school issues. You might be looking at it right there and say that looks absolutely fantastic, which it does from the front definitely. But this kit does have that super old school seam right up the side of the head. From the side doesn't look that great. I would also have liked to have seen the Vulcan's color separate to some degree, but again, that's just being picky. Besides that, this thing is pretty much flawless looking. So jumping into a size comparison, and there it is beside 2 standard high-grade kits, being the high-grade Oryx 78-2 on the left and the high-grade Gundam Mark II on the right. Beside the high-grade Freedom Gundam and the high-grade Rising Freedom Gundam. Finally then beside the high-grade Infinite Justice Type 2 and the Immortal Justice. So now jumping into the accessories, and here's the high-grade Destiny Spec 2 Zeus Silhouette with everything that it comes with, not including the Zeus Silhouette, of course, that won't fit. So all we got in here is some stuff for using with the Zeus Silhouette: the Wings of Light, Arendite Beam Sword, Massive Beam Cannon, Beam Rifle, Shield, the pair of Palma Fiocina with just 1 effect part, and a multitude of beam effects in here. So this is definitely a kit that won't keep you wanting, but this is pretty much everything that we would have seen in the 2019 version of the Destiny, ignoring the little parts we're using with the Zeus Silhouette. I'll also mention that the yellow V-fin is included in here too as well. It is left over on the runners if for some reason you want a yellow Destiny V-fin. Almost completely forgot to mention, we do have 2 of these stands in here as well. These are the new Action Base 7s. They have everything included, including this piece right here. I had them attached onto the Silhouette, holding it up in the air, so that's why I totally forgot they were in here. Anyway, I'm going to pop this in and I'm going to use this base because these bases are not that bad at all. For me, I find it much more usable than the older Bandai action bases because you can kind of pose it on the fly. Also, we do have this little tilt right here, which most other action bases do not have, which is very nice for basically eking it into the perfect pose that you want. So you can actually tilt your Gundam as well. So these might be the best stands around right now. So blasting through what we've got in here, first up we have the standard holding hands. They're pretty much standard besides the very unique Destiny back of the hand there, which does have that little shield aspect for attaching on the shield. The other hands that we have in here is a pair of these Palma Fiocina hands, very dynamic widespread hands with a little bit of a hole in the center. That hole in the center is for attention on the Palma Fiocina blasts, which look like this right here, but there is only one included. Like I mentioned in the older review, we do not have the yellow sections for on these, so you do have to actually remove it from the standard hands to pop it on here every time you change them. However, change them out is quite simply just pop it off like so, pop on the alternate one like that. You'll have to attach on the yellow section. And that right there is what the Destiny Spec 2 looks like with the Palma Fiocina basically blasting off. But yeah, everything in here is pretty much the same as what we would have seen before. This beam rifle is exactly the same as before, all in grey, which does mean it's somewhat color inaccurate as that little front section right there is meant to be in white, just like you can see right here in the manual. This little bit right here moves side to side, and we've seen this in a review before, so it just pops into the hand in the usual kind of way. It also has a little bit of a tab round back, so it can be stored on the rear skirting armor. Next up, we've got some beam effects for using with the beam boomerangs. These are quite vigorous. When not in use, these beam boomerangs are stored up on the shoulders like so. Quite well, it seems. And the beam segment just slots on into them like so. Next up in here, we've got the classic and awesome Arendite beam sword, but unlike what we would have seen before, this is in solid white with a grey blade. The classic color is that powder blue, but it is interesting to see it in a new color. This can fold out just like so, lock into place, and we've got a beam attachment which just plugs on in super simply just like so. So that is what it does look like. It looks a little bit on the plain side, and it is missing a little bit of color right here, which definitely would add at least a little bit something to it. The color in question is this red right here, so we do have stickers included if you do want to throw them on, or you have the option of detailing it up. Once again, this is an identical weapon to what we would have seen with the last release, so there's no real point in going through it entirely. It can be held in the hands like this, and when it's not in use, it can be folded up and stored around on the backpack. Next up in here, we do have the long-range beam cannon. Everything I just said pretty much about the Arendite goes for this as well. We've got a handle that flips out like so, can rotate as well. Simple but effective. Also has a flip-out mechanism, exactly the same, locks into position. And again, there really isn't much point in me going through this all again. This can be held in the hand just like we've seen before. Also, it can be folded up and stored on the backpack just like the Arendite beam sword. And just like that, we are missing some little triangles of red, but the stickers are included. Next up, we've got the shield in matching colors to the mobile suit itself, nicely color separated. Around back, it is a little bit on the plain side, and it does open up just like so for another little bit of color inside of it right there. Again, just like we saw before, it can attach onto the back of the arm, and looks like that. Why have one shield when you can have three? Well, we only have one beam effect for using with the shields on the rear of the hands. This is what it looks like right here. Diffracts the light very nicely. Or should I say reflects in that kind of shiny kind of way. Again, this attaches onto the back of the hands and looks like this right here. Lastly, then we do have the wings of light. These look spectacular. These are a rigid clear plastic as opposed to what we get sometimes, which is kind of like the beam saber material. I prefer this because it does reflect the light a little nicer, feels a little bit more premium. When it is attached on, it looks like this right here. I'm not going to attach them on right now. I'm going to wait till I've got that Zeus Silhouette attached before attaching these for that final over-the-top look. And speaking of the Zeus Silhouette, there it is in all its mechanical bird mad crazy glory. So if you're questioning whether a single stand can hold this up or not, the answer is kind of. I wouldn't really trust on a shelf, it feels like it might slowly topple over, but that is of course why Bandai did includes two stands for using with it. So this one just basically goes around back like that to help support it, but overall these do a pretty good job of holding up this beast. So when it comes to the aesthetics of the Zeus Silhouette, this is ridiculously unique. This is very, very, very nice. It is not really like anything I've ever built before when it comes to gunpla. By the way, if you do want to see the build of this, I did that in a separate video, and it does build up nice and simply. It's not difficult with lots of large pieces. What we get then is essentially a giant gun and backpack in the shape of a bird. You can see the big magazine sticking out at the top, the targeting ray dome, there's missile sections all over it. And even though this does look like a big old chunk, there is a couple of points of articulation on it, so let's have a look at them. And also on that note, while speaking of articulation, I'm not going to be doing the standard articulation on the Destiny Gundam today because I did do that in the full review of the 2019 Destiny Gundam. All I can say is back then I was super impressed, and I'm still impressed right now. This really is the progenitor of the SEED action system, and it poses up an absolute storm. It's nice to pose, it's good and solid, and an overall great all-rounder. So when it does come to the articulation we have on that, the wings can move up just like so, and quite a bit, then down like that, which is very, very nice, and probably nicer once it's on the actual Gundam. These segments can move back and forward like so, and these thruster segments can open out like that, as well as close into this point. So some, but not a lot of articulation, mainly the wings. So now it's time to disassemble the Zeus Silhouette down into its elements. In order to do this, you first pop off the unmanned cockpit section up front. The wings pop off simply like this and like this. The radome section up top comes off like this. You take the barrel rig off the back, and finally from underneath you remove this segment. The wings then break down into a further 3 individual parts, and the segment from underneath once again breaks down into 3 separate parts. And what you get then in the end is this right here. Of course, with the other wing over there broken up into 3, I'm just leaving it like this for the sake of example. But yeah, this is pretty much what you break it down into, and I'm guessing this right here, this big yoke, this is our cannon. First off, that right there is what the Destiny Gundam finally looks like with the Zeus Silhouette attached on, and this is pretty over the top. Pretty cool. Now, I will mention actually doing this isn't as bad as I thought it would be, and the final combined form is very, very solid, and the stands included are great. But anyway, as for getting this done, first off you grab this little segment which came from underneath. This is the new rear skirting armor. Arms extend up just like so, and it attaches onto the rear skirting. Next up, you get one of the arms off that section and reattach it onto where it would have came off, underneath the arm and around into the backpack, which flips up and clips onto the chest as a new chest armor section. Same on the other side, except this one has a little bit of an attached arm for attaching the big old gun onto, but it all does, well, attach on the exact same way. Next up in here, we've got the barrels for around back, and this is extremely clever. I wondered how this would attach, but it attaches on really well. First off, this little hook sticks out just like so. The bottom C-clip aspect of this attaches onto where it was on the Zeus Silhouette, which is this little arm section. Then it slots on into the storage parts on the back of the Destiny, where the Arendite and the beam cannon would have went. Finally, the hook section up top then hooks over the top for a rock solid attachment. This is going nowhere. Next up then, we've got the targeting system, which is the radome aspect we removed from the Zeus Silhouette. I will mention in the instructions here, it did say about removing this section to pop on this section. This is just an option at any point just to have the missile hatches open. You don't actually have to do it here, so I just threw on the other ones once again. You realign all this up, and that attaches onto the other side of the storage rack of the Destiny, doing the exact same thing, clipping in multiple points and holding on rock solid. Next up then is the legs, and the instructions actually tells you to do a lot of stuff you don't actually need to do, but I did them anyway. First off, you do have to remove the feet in order to attach these on. What you didn't have to do was close them up just like so. This doesn't make a difference. Most of the time when it's posted in the manual, these are open, but the manual said to do it maybe just for assembly. The feet come off, and then these attach on where the feet came off. The shin armor section just attaches on then like so. The rear section in the manual, it did say to realign the wing around like this. That might be, once again, for the simplicity of attaching it, but again, in most poses it is flared out. This attaches onto the rear of the leg just like so, and that is the legs finished. Doing this is very, very simple. I did it holding it in the air, which is usually a lot more difficult, but when it is just on the stands like so, it's super simple. Just clip, clip, and clip. Finally, now we're onto that huge linear cannon. First off, what you do here is you flip out this little segment underneath. It slides out perfectly. It attaches onto that little arm section coming out from underneath the left arm, and again attaches on simply. At this point, I didn't realize I had to modify the other stand with a piece, but it just shows how solid this kit is that I could actually do that one-handed and nothing fell apart. This won't hold up the linear cannon itself, of course, so you do need to use the stand. The Destiny's shield can be attached onto the side of it just like so for an extra bit of protection. And finally, grabbing the barrel from around back, it slides off like so. You remove this section on the side. This is where the new handle attaches on. and that whole barrel just attaches down into the end of it after twisting the top section of that big main body. Next up, there is another handle further down the actual linear cannon. You pop off this little cap section here. Inside is the handle which pops out. And I was actually surprised here. I thought it would be really hard to get this into both hands, but the Destiny has very fluid articulation. These handles are perfectly spaced and everything's just set to work. So getting it into the hands is simple. You don't have to disassemble the hands because these handles are smaller than the hands themselves, so they can just slide onto them, so it looks like it's holding them when it's kind of not really. There's kind of pose on the handles. Overall, this is what it looks like, and I am super impressed. Getting this into a little bit of a pose, this is very, very solid. You're not going to get a whole lot of poses out of it because the leg articulation has been pretty much clamped down, as well as the movement of the upper body. But this is the point I realized that in the instruction manual, most of the time, all those wings and the feet are flared out for action poses. Finally then getting the wings of light attached onto it for that absolute X-shaped silhouette. And this works out super simple too. Again, it's solid, everything holds together. This is perfectly designed to be a big combination mobile armor, mobile suit. It just works out really well. A lot of these can be a bit of a nightmare. This is not one of those nightmares. Lastly then, it does actually mention that this little bit right here, that nose little section that brings it in, this can be attached onto an action base. It does say it's an option because there's 2 action bases in here. Both are required for that to be put together, but you can just use whatever one you want. This one I've got right here is just the Simple Stand by Good Smile Company, and it doesn't work. So yeah, you need to use one with a thick end. This, it's no good. As for a bit of a size comparison, there it is beside the trio of Gundam sizes: high grade on the left, master grade on the right, and the perfect grade unleashed in the back. So as you can see, it's pretty big. If its feet are almost touching the ground, it's pretty much in and around the same size head height as a master grade. It does have a lot of big wings around back, and of course that cannon is absolutely gigantic. So anyway, that right there is it for the review, and the high-grade Destiny Spec 2 with the Zeus Silhouette gets Platinum tier. Now you might be wondering why this didn't get Gundarium tier, because pretty much essentially everything about it is perfect. But in order to be Gundarium tier, that tier is reserved for kits that absolutely break the mold, things like we've never seen before. This is big, it is cool, but it doesn't really do anything ridiculously new or over the top. It's a nice, solid mobile armor combined with a very nice Gundam kit. All in all, it's the perfect package, just, again, doesn't do anything incredibly unique. Going through the list, aesthetically this is absolutely beautiful. Everything about it is pretty much perfect besides some color inaccuracies on the weapons. When it does come to the Zeus Silhouette and all of its aspects, the only thing that isn't really color accurate is the tons and tons of missiles on it, which will need to be detailed up individually. When it comes to the accessories in here, there's tons of stuff for using with the actual Gundam itself, and then the silhouette for using on the Gundam. You can use the silhouette as the silhouette on its own, or attached right onto the Destiny Gundam. This is a kit that has so many options, you will never get bored. When it comes to the articulation and the posability, this is a solid kit and holds up even well with the silhouette attached onto it. As a Gundam, it's got great articulation, but when you do get everything onto it silhouette-wise, you're not really going to get too much out of it. Kind of locked in position for the way it holds the rifle, it can just kind of tilt it up and down, and the legs are a little bit locked in position too. Also, there is no swivel in the upper body anymore, which does mean essentially, for the most part, it's pretty much a statue with a couple of angles you can pose it in, but that's about it. It does look fantastic in all of those angles though. But yeah, that's it. Anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to come back for more Gunpla reviews, and I will see you next time. Once again, I can't finish this video right here without special thanks to the channel members and the patrons over on Patreon, including Simon Paskin, Abraxas, Caleb Engelhart, Joe, RG59061, ShadowWolf179, Van Fawn, and Scotty Thomas.